Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome in for another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. Hey, do you ever see recurring numbers like 333 or 111 or 777? Today, we are doing something that is near and dear to my heart and something I've been wanting to do for a while. We are diving into the energy of numerology, and I mean really diving in. This is your crash course, your foundational overview. Whether numbers have always intrigued you, but you never quite knew where to begin, or even if you already have some numerology knowledge, I think you're going to find this episode really interesting because I'm not just going to give you one set of meanings. We're actually going to look at where these systems of numerology come from, four different systems of numerology, why they sometimes agree, why they sometimes differ, and what the numbers mean across these multiple traditions. Plus, we are going to dive into the meanings of the recurring numbers besides just the individual numbers. So whether you are someone who keeps seeing the same numbers everywhere, or you just love anything that helps you understand yourself or your soul's journey or your relationship with the universe a little more deeply, this one is for you. Now, before we dive in, I want to acknowledge that the four traditions that we are going to talk about today are not the only numerology systems that exist in the world. There's so many, and they're all like really rich and fascinating traditions across various cultures, including things like Chinese numerology and Japanese numerology and so many others. Each has kind of their own distinct logic and wisdom. Today, we're focusing on four specific traditions that I think really give a beautiful and well-rounded foundation. And I've realized over the years that these are somehow the four systems that I am most pulling from myself with my own ongoing relationship with numbers that I have had for as long as I can remember. I can remember being a kid and assigning meanings to numbers and seeing those meanings around me in the world and feeling communicated with through numbers, like literally grade school age. So this has always been a part of me. And the more I've learned, and I still have so much to learn in some of these traditions, as we'll talk about as we go, but the more I learned, the more I realized like I am taking some of this from some of these systems here. So that's why I have prioritized these for this specific episode. So just know that what we're covering today is a meaningful slice of a much larger overall picture of all numerology, and it really is an ancient body of knowledge. And if any of these systems like spark your curiosity, I absolutely encourage you to keep exploring beyond this episode for yourself, and be sure to save this episode so that you can revisit it yourself and maybe even share it with a friend, because there's a lot of good stuff in this one. First, I'll quickly introduce you to the four systems that we are going to be drawing from today and that I largely draw from in my work, as I said. And then we're going to go through the meanings of each number 1 through 9. And then I will get into the meanings for those recurring numbers such as 444 or 888. And for the record, as we go through this episode, it's okay to take what resonates with you and leave the rest. You don't have to accept everything I'm saying. You don't have to work within these meanings of numbers, but I communicate this way with the universe all the time, and it's really fun. And I know you guys always love tools and exciting things that you can use in your own life. And this is one you can integrate and start playing with like right away. So let's get into it. First, we're going to go through these four systems that I mentioned, and I'm just going to give a brief, like handful of sentence explanation of the system just to keep it light and brief. Again, if you want to dig more into any of these systems, they're all really profound and I highly recommend. So the first system that we are going to be pulling from is the Pythagorean numerology. That is right, friends. For those of you that ever went to school, you might have heard of Pythagorean theorem. Well, there's a Pythagorean system of numerology. This is the most widely used system in modern Western numerology. It's developed from the teachings of Greek philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras. And this system of numerology dates back to 500 BCE. So a really long time ago. Pythagoras believed that numbers were the building blocks of all of our human reality, and that everything in the universe could be understood through numerical vibration. This system of numerology assigns these numbers 1 through 9 sequentially to the letters of the alphabet and uses your full birth name, for example, to calculate core numbers like your life path, expression, your soul path. Have you ever heard of these things? This is all the Pythagorean system of numerology. And the system most people first encounter is this one, and this is often the foundation of most like mainstream numerology books and courses, is this Pythagorean numerology. So we are going to draw from that one. The second system of numerology that we draw from, and that I noticed I was somehow drawing from without knowing the system formally, is the Chaldean numerology. This system of numerology is considered by many practitioners to be the oldest and the most spiritually precise system of numerology. This one originates in ancient Babylon over 4,000 years ago, so a little bit older. This tradition is rooted in the belief that numbers are not just symbols, they're living vibrations that carry specific energetic frequencies, and those frequencies are actively shaping our lives, our paths, our soul's experience at all times. So the Chaldean system of numerology views numbers as a sacred language through which the universe communicates. And it's one that they, in this system believe that has been existent long before human beings developed the system to interpret it. And it's part of our day-to-day life in all the ways. Even like your nickname in this system, the name most people commonly call you, let's just say, factors into your numerology in this system, because Chaldean numerology is deeply interested in what the energetically alive and active and present parts of your life are. So it's similar, but it's a little bit different. This was really fascinating to me as I've learned more about this system, that I was already using a lot of the elements naturally. Like I said, I've had this strange communication relationship through numbers for like as long as I can remember. So how funny when to discover that there's a system that says that. So the third system that we're going to be pulling from today is Vedic numerology. This is rooted in ancient Indian traditions and Jyotish astrology, which is a form of astrology. So Vedic numerology, it teaches that the numbers 1 through 9 are governed by a specific planetary ruler. And these planets and the planetary energies are woven into the fabric of who you are, how your life unfolds, your day-to-day. And in this tradition, the cosmos, the planetary alignments, and the numbers, it's not separate systems. It's all part of the same system. They're all speaking the same language in Vedic numerology. Your birth is not like a random date, but it's a precise energetic event. And the numbers connected to it reveal the planetary forces that are most active in like shaping your soul's journey here in this lifetime. And one of the things that makes Vedic astrology like fascinating on its own is that your numbers are not just abstract vibrations. They're living planetary forces. So they represent the sun, the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, and all these other celestial bodies. They're not just influencing your numbers symbolically. They're, in this tradition, actively and continuously vibrationally shaping your experience from the moment of your birth. So it's really fascinating. The other system, the fourth system here, and final system that we're going to be talking about and pulling from, is the Kabbalistic numerology. This is rooted in that Jewish mysticism tradition of Kabbalah or Kabbalah. This system approaches numbers as expressions of divine creative force rather than like personality indicators. And what's so interesting about it is that in this system, each number maps one of the 10 sacred divine qualities through which that infinite expresses itself into the tree of life, basically. So these are like representative of core qualities of the expression of the divine, basically, that move through the segments of the tree of life in this tradition. So instead of being like personality traits, or their overall qualities, and rather than like telling us who we are as individuals in this Kabbalistic numerology, it's more about being concerned with like our soul's journey and our spiritual lessons in this lifetime and our relationship to divine will, for example. It's less commonly taught on its own, like as a separate system of numerology. And instead, it's like more deeply woven into the Kabbalistic mystical tradition itself. It's never been separate to begin with. So those are the 4 traditions that we are going to be pulling from. And then as we get into the numbers themselves, this is the part I think you're going to really love. So for each number 1 through 9 in this next little segment here, I will give you the meaning of the number from each 4 of these different perspectives of these traditions we just talked about. And then I'll also share my personal perspective, like the energies that I work with this number. I'll let you know how I work with that number's energy in my own spiritual practice and spiritual life, as far as like what I read the meaning as is, I guess, what I want to say, because like I said, I've been having a relationship with these numbers for a long time myself. So as we go through these, I invite you just to kind of notice which meanings resonate for you. Some you might even find surprising, actually, the meanings of these numbers. And before we dive in, a quick little disclaimer: this is absolutely not intended to be an exhaustive list of the qualities. There are always, more and more nuanced things we can go into, but this is just kind of an overview of the main qualities. And I'm sure there are layers and meanings that I haven't quite captured here, so please forgive me in advance. I'm joking, kind of. So, okay, let's begin here at the very beginning. Let's start with number 1. So the energy of the number 1 for numerology in the Pythagorean theorem, 1 indicates initiation, independence, leadership, the self standing alone. Think of like how the number 1 actually looks, originating new cycles, willpower. So that is the meaning of 1 for Pythagorean numerology. For Chaldean numerology, 1 is the energy of the sun. It's creative force, individuality, the ego in its highest outward expression. Divine masculinity is represented by the number 1. Ambition, drive, higher calling rather than personal gain is the Chaldean meaning of the number 1. In the Vedic numerology, number 1 is ruled by, again, the sun. It represents soul purpose, authority. Natural leaders are here to learn to lead humanity, have the number 1. Strong psychics, spiritual sensitives when it's developed properly. That's the Vedic meaning for number 1. Now, the number 1 in the Kabbalistic tradition is a little different, but also interesting. This represents unity, divine will. The point before creation expands, just that single 1, right? The number of the life force of God itself. Divided consciousness. That's how the Kabbalistic tradition reads the number 1. How I often read the energy of the number 1, and if you want the real expanded version of this one, go to the month of December in the pod, and you will see that we did an episode about this year, 2026, being a 1 year. And I gave all the qualities to expect in a 1 year. So there's much more represented in the 1, but you'll see it's the same as what I'm going to say. It's 1 is self, the individual. It's our power, standing in our power, standing in the fullness of ourself. And the thing I forgot to mention that I just want to quickly mention here is any of these qualities can be, like, everything's on a spectrum, right? And any of these qualities can be demonstrated through us and in our lives in the most positive side of the spectrum or the most challenged side of the spectrum, or anywhere in between. So when you think about self, independence, power as representative of the number 1, the energy itself is neutral, right? It's not challenged or positive. When we display or demonstrate the energy of the number 1 in the positive, that's self-care and self-love and taking care of ourself and really knowing and honoring ourselves. That's powerful in a different way, right? It's using power not just for ourselves, but on behalf of others. When 1 is in the challenge, and we think of the challenging aspect of the number 1 in numerology, it's that selfish, self-centered, kind of narcissistic vibe of energy. So it's the same energy: 1, self, power, individuality, right? But depending on how it's moving through us, how we are in relationship to it, if we're working on ourselves, right, is how it will demonstrate. So I forgot I wanted to say this at the beginning of this segment, but nonetheless, think about that as we're moving through these as well, because like I said, I see the one as self and power, self-love, self-care, individuality. I always think about the magician with this number 2 in tarot, because the magician is the individual. It's the alchemist getting ready to step out on this path, having all the tools and all the potential, but now needing to like engage in the world to manifest or to make, to make the life, right? So the energy of the one is fascinating. New beginnings, I also think of with the one. So one's a really powerful energy. All of these energies are powerful in their own ways. I have no favorite children when it comes to the numbers, but you'll see as we move through them, now that I reminded you that they can be in like the positive or the challenge side of the spectrum, it'll be really interesting to kind of feel into that energy as we go. So then you can see it as well when we move into the recurring numbers a little bit later. So let's move on through the numbers to number 2. So the energy of the number 2 in numerology, in Pythagorean numerology, 2 is about the energy of duality, receptivity, cooperation, the like instability and the possibility that arrives when unity divides, right? So going from 1 into 2, right? Dividing into 2. Think of like cell division. Diplomacy in Pythagorean numerology in number 2. The power of the supporting role, right? Think about all of the incredible supporting actors, let's just say, or the support staff that makes the wheel turn, right? So number 2 in Pythagorean theorem, those are the main meanings. Number 2 in the Chaldean theory of numerology is moon energy, highly intuitive and psychic, emotionally sensitive. This is cycles and fluctuation. And in Chaldean numerology, number 2 is most connected to dreams and subconscious knowing. So if 1 is conscious, then 2 would be a subconscious level, right? And also in the Chaldean numerology theory, 2 is thought of as being like the receptive channel, which is kind of interesting. In Vedic numerology, number 2 is also ruled by the moon. How interesting that these totally different systems overlap here. So in Vedic numerology, number 2 also represents emotional intelligence, nurturing, strong intuition. Again, we're this idea that we're here to, on this earth plane, to learn emotional mastery and find inner stability independent of our outer circumstance. That is how the Vedic numerology looks at the number 2. In Kabbalistic numerology, numbers 2 represents wisdom and understanding, but intention. So it's like the first division from unity, because for that system, 1 is about unity and divine. So think of it again as like dividing, right? The duality, like in the Pythagorean theorem, or not theorem, the Pythagorean numerology. That's just popped right out. So it's really the first time that there's a division of unity for the Kabbalistic tradition with the number 2. 2 is also the number of reflection in Kabbalah. It's duality as a sacred necessity, but not as a flaw, right? Often we think of duality like both sides of the coin is like a flaw. Oh, the strong side and the weak side, the good side and the bad side, right? But in Kabbalistic numerology, 2 is just a sacred necessity, right? You can't have the light without the dark, right? So the way I see the number 2 and the way I work with it in numerology is often about partnership, duality, of course, because there's the yin and the yang, both sides of the coin. And sometimes 2 can be a juggling energy, like we're between options or we're wavering or there's a decision to be made, an uncertainty. 2 can often represent options, right? And sometimes it's feeling into the energy of it. Sometimes it's the wavering between options. 2 can also be coming together though, right? Because sometimes 2 can be pulling apart, but 2 can also be moving towards each other. And of course, I also think of intuition with the number 2, the High Priestess, which is a card in tarot. Some of mine also seem to move through tarot, which if you guys want to do a full tarot episode, I don't even know how I would do that without it being a long series. But if you want to talk about tarot or symbology in tarot, let me know. We could do a separate episode about that because I love talking about tarot. There's always more to learn there as well. But the High Priestess is really embodied intuition demonstrating into the world. She is the alchemist, essentially, but in a different way than the magician. The number 2 is often about collaboration, right? Not just being an individual and on our own. So let's move into the number 3, and I'll give you all of the meanings for number 3 in numerology next. So in Pythagorean numerology, 3 is the first complete number. And remember, this one does have a mathematical component to it. So my math friends out there, you can tell us about this first complete number. 3 in Pythagorean numerology is also creative expression, communication, joy, synthesis of the 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 are cooperating and create the third, right? It's the gift of words and art and expression. So 3 is a really beautiful unified number in a different way than 1. In Chaldean numerology, the 3 is big Jupiter energy. So expansion, luck, optimism, the number of growth and abundance. It's highly creative, but it needs grounding still. It can kind of scatter in this energy if this highly creative, inspired energy isn't grounded and focused. It can poof, that inspiration's just gone. So I think that's a really beautiful expression in the Chaldean numerology. In Vedic astrology, shockingly, number 3 is also ruled by Jupiter, and it represents wisdom, teaching, spiritual knowledge. Natural teachers and guides are number 3 in Vedic numerology. It's a strong connection to higher learning in all its forms. In Kabbalistic numerology, the 3 is beauty and balance. It's reconciliation of opposing forces. Like if the 1 and 2 are opposing, they reconcile into 3. It's about harmony, but often through creative synthesis, right? 3 is really about harmony, synthesis, that energy. And 3 is also the number of the divine child in the Kabbalah. Now, for me, when I look at the number 3, the way I read that energy, and again, it's case by case because we're using our intuition as we're working with these energies. But for me, 3 is often about creation or creativity. So maybe we're bringing something into the world, but maybe it is about our creative energy as an individual, or our relationship with creative energy. It's about expansion and growth. It's the number of the ascended master, which I thought it was so interesting when I saw that in the Kabbalistic tradition, it was the number of the divine child, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's the number of the ascended master. That makes so much sense. And I also, with this one, this is so dorky, I also think about the power of 3 from Charmed, where 3 is a different type of, maybe balance is not the right word, but it's a different type of succinct cooperative energy for creativity. So that is how I often think of the number 3. Let's move into the number 4. 4 in these different systems of numerology is really interesting too. So in the Pythagorean numerology, 4 is about form and foundation. The number in Pythagoreans, let me try again. The number 4 in Pythagorean numerology is considered the most sacred. It's discipline, it's reliability, it's building lasting structures, it's practical mastery. So 4 is a really powerful number in Pythagorean numerology. In Chaldean numerology, 4 is primarily ruled by Uranus, or sometimes the sun, but a far second. The number is unexpected change and disruption within structure. It's unconventional energy that is just below a stable surface. So think of a rumbling under the surface before an overthrow, let's just say, right? Or rebellion. So 4 is very different in the Chaldean system of numerology. It's brilliance that doesn't always follow the rules. So there's a bit of a rebel vibe in the Chaldean numerology with 4, which is very much in contrast to the Pythagorean form, foundation, discipline, right? In Vedic numerology then, with the number 4, it doesn't quite match. We don't see it with Uranus here. In Vedic numerology, the number 4 is ruled by Rahu, which is the north node of the moon. Rahu is about karmic lessons and around materialism, ambition, this idea that we're here to work hard and build, but also to question, what are we building towards? What's the meaning of it? How are we being in community? It also represents an unconventional path, though, which is kind of interesting. It maybe has more of like a Pentra evaluator vibe, but it has less of this rebel vibe for me in this tradition. So it's really interesting how it also is an unconventional path. Who knows? Maybe I'll add that into my personal meanings. In Kabbalistic numerology, the 4 is about stability, the physical world made manifest, the 4 directions, the 4 elements, divine order expressed in material form. Now, for me, when I work with the energy of the 4, I often think about balance, stability. I often think about like a table or a chair with 4 legs or 4 points touching the ground and the stability of that. Sometimes I also think of the 4 directions, the 4 corners. Whether it's like a physical space, I might think of the 4 corners of the room and holding the energetic container. I might also think of it like the 4 directions, north, south, east, west. It depends what I'm working on, maybe how I would use the 4. But I do often think of it as incredibly harmonious, balanced, stable, grounded, foundational. So it's interesting to think about that. And this one is a little different than you'll see at the end, the angel number or the 444. So put a pin in this one. Let's move into number 5 and what number 5 means in numerology. So in Pythagorean numerology, 5 is about movement, transformation. It's, of course, the midpoint between 1 and 9, right? If we're working 1 through 9. It's freedom versus commitment. It's like this full range of our human sensory experience. But it's also about adaptability with the 5, which I feel like 5 vibes similarly kind of throughout these, which is really interesting. I'm interested to see how you hear the similarities here, because they're said slightly differently, I feel like, but they vibe the same. So in Chaldean numerology, the 5 is ruled by Mercury. And we know that Mercury is communication and travel, the ultimate communicator and connector. 5 is about being quick-minded and versatile. 5 is also the number associated with travel and exchange of ideas here in Chaldean numerology. And really, it also touches into our need to thrive, but our need to have variety to really, truly thrive. So it's interesting the way that one's presented. In Vedic numerology, the 5 is also ruled by Mercury, interestingly. And it really is about intelligence, wit, adaptability again, being here to like learn discernment among many options, because it's a busy, crazy world and we can only put our energy so many places at once, right? So discernment about our options, strong communication gifts, restlessness until we find meaning in a certain direction in Vedic numerology, which is kind of interesting. In Kabbalistic numerology, the 5 is about severity and strength. So this is the number of divine judgment. It's also recognized as the halfway point between heaven and earth in the Kabbalistic tradition, which is very interesting. That feels very like heart energy, but let's keep going. So it's also a power that must be kind of like wielded with integrity with the 5 for Kabbalistic numerology. It's kind of like with great wisdom comes great power, but great responsibility. It's sort of that feeling. Now, the way I often perceive or read the energy of the 5 has to do with change, movement, transformation. And what's interesting here is like change or movement, that can be travel. Sometimes it's moving home, sometimes it's moving jobs, sometimes it's doing the same job at a different location in a different way. So it is kind of interesting how these can be so similar. For me, 5 is also about learning put into practice, which I guess another way to say adaptability, right? So it's been fascinating to me to kind of hear these worded differently, I guess. 5 often also for me represents like a significant point on our path. Sometimes this can mean a plot twist, which again, right? Think about if we're in like the middle of the movie, like these couple other traditions we're talking about a midpoint, right? So it's like, oh, time for a plot twist. Sometimes 5 can be about release, but like release, like pruning to allow new growth type of release. So 5 is an interesting transitional, transformational number. And I think it's very interesting how it shows up in the other traditions too. So number 6 in the Pythagorean numerology is about responsibility and love in action, not in resting. Nurturing, it's about home, it's about harmony, the desire to heal and care for others. It's really like true service from a selfless, wholehearted place, but not like a self sacrificing martyrdom, right? So that's the number six. Number six in Chaldean numerology is ruled by Venus. It is about beauty and love and artistic gifts and deep sense of responsibility to family, but also to community. It's that like extension of love and beauty and gifts. It's also the number that is associated with like harmony at home and having like creative beauty through our creativity. In Vedic numerology, interestingly, again, here we see the 5 ruled by Venus. And it also represents here, or 6, sorry, my little brain. The 6 is in Vedic numerology represented by Venus, just like in the Chaldean numerology. And it represents grace, luxury, creativity, relationships. Again, this idea that we're here to learn the balance between giving and receiving love and other gifts, giving freely and receiving freely of gifts. Natural healers and artists have the 6 in Vedic numerology. In Kabbalistic numerology, interestingly, it's also beauty, harmony at the center of the tree of life. This is actually the heart of the sacred centers in this tree of life, in this tradition. It's a place where divine and human love meet, which is beautiful. Compassion as a spiritual force, essentially. For me, when I work with a 6, I think of it in lots of ways. It can be about rebuilding. If the 5 is about change or transformation or pruning, like falling away, the 6 then is about rebuilding or growth after a challenging time or a change or a plot twist. It's growing forward, right? It can be about generosity. I think sometimes of like 6 of Pentacles is about giving and receiving of gifts. And that can be on a one-to-one basis, but it can also be in a greater community sense, right? Perhaps it's us learning something about ourselves and then giving freely of that new gift to our communities at large, right? So it's a generosity in the giving. 6 is often about abundance too. We're giving from a cup that's overflowing. Giving and receiving are often a theme with the 6. So I like that this shows up, so much all through all the systems. Okay, let's move into the number 7. This 7 in Pythagorean numerology is this inner knowing. It's sacred mastery. It's this vehicle of human life in Pythagorean tradition that is governing life's turning points. So it's like introspection, spiritual seeking, trusting that which cannot be proven. So it's a pretty spiritual number in Pythagorean numerology. In Chaldean numerology, here the 7 is ruled by Neptune, which is the most mystical number in Chaldean system of numerology. It's a really deeply spiritually sensitive energy here. It's the psychic gifts. It's the number of hidden knowledge and inner worlds, which would extend to the unseen worlds. It is often misunderstood by others. So I think it's often misunderstood of like how it shows up. But then I think people who have strong 7 energy are also often misunderstood by others, especially in this Vedic tradition here, where it's like, yeah, often, rather not the Vedic, the Chaldean. It's like, yeah, often misunderstood by others. So in the Vedic tradition, interestingly, it's a little different. The 7 is ruled by Ketu, which is the south node of the moon. So instead of watery Neptune, it is here Ketu, which is the part of the moon. So it still holds this deeply spiritual significance in Vedic numerology. It is almost like otherworldly. It's here to develop intuition and detach from purely material concerns. It is the number of natural mystics and healers in the Vedic tradition. In Kabbalistic numerology, 7 represents victory and eternity. And I guess we could see how that's spiritual. And the number is like a number of divine completion and rest. Think of like the Sabbath is the 7th day. It's about sacred stillness and spiritual practice and the place where all of our effort kind of yields to grace and rest. I think of the number 7 a little differently. I mean, there's some overlap, but I often think of the number 7 as choices. Sometimes this 7 represents a choice point for us, or looking at the choices in front of us, or being aware of the choices on, our proverbial menu, so to speak. But as part of this choice point, right, I also think of it as like a consideration point. So sometimes when the 7 is showing up, it's like, what do you really want to build next? Which has to do with our intention. Like, what is your intention going forward? Yes, you've grown all the way through the 1 through 6 and into the 7. And now, like, what is it that you're wanting to create actually? There can be a little bit of a review to move forward, kind of an aspect as this pivotal point with the 7 for me. And of course, sometimes 7 is sacred or mystical. It's why in some places 7 is considered lucky. It has more to do with the spiritual significance. And depending on which traditions we follow, 7 is a really sacred number in many, many traditions. Not all, of course. So 7 can always also represent like a spiritual pursuit, a pure spiritual dedication, something sacred or mystical, spiritual gifts, just depending, right? Let's move into the number 8, which, like I said, no favorites among these numbers, but 8's pretty great. In Pythagorean numerology, 8 is a power number. It is about karma. It's about like mastering this material world. It's the only number who the symbol is infinite when it's rotated, right? So 8, if you're into math, you might imagine that being very special. It's cause and effect in physical form. So it does touch into those universal laws. It has to do with authority, with the right to use power and resources. So kind of sacred in a different way in this Pythagorean numerology system. Now, the number 8 in Chaldean numerology is ruled by Saturn, again, the teacher. Karma and cosmic law and order. Saturn is often also about restriction, but it's not restriction just for the sake of like to restrict. It's restriction as to teach, right? So holding back something so that we can learn something else, or maybe not giving the student the answer and making them do the long division on the board so that they have the deep knowledge, right? It's that kind of energy. And in this Chaldean numerology system, it really is the number that teaches us like discipline, responsibility. It's about long-term reward. And it's also about building something with an integrity that like really lasts. In Vedic numerology, the number 8 is also ruled by Saturn, which is so cool. It's the most karmic number in Vedic numerology. It's about being here to work hard and face significant life lessons and the power to surmount them. It also often carries great challenge and great potential for wisdom and achievement. So it is like you have your great success, but it wasn't, it was hard won and very much earned as part of the energy of the 8 here in this Vedic tradition. In Kabbalistic numerology, 8's about splendor and cycles of return and rebirth. It's the number of the perfect rhythm. It's divine intelligence expressed through natural law. It is cycles of completing and renewing, which if you think about it is that infinity sign, right? So when I think about 8, which is, if I had a favorite, this might be it. It's a power number. It is attention. It is manifestation. It is that reciprocal law. And it's most of the universal laws, right? It's that law of cause and effect, that law of give and take, is that law of reciprocation. What you put out comes back, right? And again, that is straight to that figure 8 symbol that we see in the 8 on its side. So for me, one of the things I also think about as like a mantra with the 8 is what you think about, you bring about. Remember, we are also divine creators. So it can also be a representative of strength. And this can be inner strength, and it can also be spiritual strength, reminding you that you are a soul in this human experience, not, much more powerful than sometimes we would think, that you're fully supported by the universe. So 8 is quite a powerful number. Now, the final number in the numerology 1 through 9, which is how the system of numerology works. Let's go through the meanings of the 9 so you can see as we close out the cycle of these number meanings. So the number 9 in Pythagorean numerology is about completion, universal compassion. It's the last single digit number containing the essence of all the numbers that came before it and all numbers that will be created. It's the energy of the old soul. It's humanitarian. Sometimes it's thought of as like letting go, endings that create space for the next cycle. In Chaldean numerology, the number 9 is considered so sacred that it's not assigned to any letter in the way that they calculate their numerological name calculations. It's the number of the divine energy itself, universal law, spiritual completion. It is like the divine masculine energy in its highest expression of courage and selflessness and just holding the whole. So it is a divine number in Chaldean numerology. In Vedic numerology, 9 is ruled by Mars, which is about courage, leadership. It also has a humanitarian aspect or intention behind it. It's kind of like the soul that came here to save something larger than itself is the 9. It's a very powerful energy that often, like, to be satisfied, it needs to be directed towards a higher purpose or the good of the greater good of all, or otherwise it can turn very much inward. In this Vedic tradition of, like, if you're a number 9 person, you like have to find a humanitarian pursuit that serves the world. In the Kabbalistic tradition, 9 is the foundation. It's the channel through which, like, all divine energy flows into the material world. It's the number closest to that pure spiritual source while still in form as part of the tree. And it's the bridge point between heaven and earth, which is really beautiful. The way I think of 9 is coming to completion. So sometimes if I see it in a reading, for example, it might be, oh, this person's coming complete with this cycle or this pattern or this energy. They're coming to completion. It could be the final phase of something, that something's like wrapping up, or they're just finishing something, or something's about to end. It can, usually it's about completion though, that's like ending in a whole new chapter. Maybe a whole new chapter of that book, or sometimes maybe even a whole new book, right? It can be big closings. But it's also about leadership. You've like climbed the mountain and now you're at the top and you're going to lead the others to help them. Sometimes 9 can be about reward, like you've worked really hard and learned all there is to learn, and now there's a reward. It can be abundance, but this is often more like a soul type of reward. Like you feel wonderful about your accomplishments, and now you can also hold the light for others. It's more that energy. And sometimes 9, depending on the situation it relates to, can be about relief, right? Some of our roads are long and windy and treacherous. And when we get to the end of that road and we're like getting ready to see the overlook, it's like, oh my God, thank God we're here, right? So sometimes that's the 9 energy, just depending. But because it is the last number in the cycle and rolls us over to the 1 to begin again, it's all the things that you might naturally think there: lessons, reflection, coming to completion, sometimes with versions of ourselves, even getting ready to like emerge anew. So those are the number meanings 1 through 9. Now you have the foundational meanings for all 9 numbers in like the full system of astrology. And you know a little bit about them across all 4 of these sacred traditions, plus my way of reading them. And I hope your mind is like a little bit delightfully blown right now, because mine always is when I sit down with how much these ancient systems actually work together and are so similar to each other. And at their core, for me, you've probably heard me say this a lot, but I believe that all divine wisdom comes from the same source. So while I find it like exciting and fascinating when there's overlap, I'm never truly like surprised, because I'm like, yeah, it comes from the same divine source. This is so cool. This makes so much sense. So, different parts of the world, different systems, different spiritual frameworks, but all having touched into some vibrational wisdom that is divine. So before we wrap up, I want to talk about something that I get asked about constantly, and I think it's a really fun thing to explore. And honestly, it's probably the reason a lot of you click this episode in the first place. It's those repeating numbers, the 1s and 4s and 333s that maybe you see on your clock or receipts or license plates or somewhere around you in the world. And it's in those moments when we look up like exactly at the right second for that number to pass us, right? It feels just too synchronistic. So now that you actually understand what each number means, like at its core, the repeating versions are going to make so much more sense to you and might be much easier to grasp and remember, actually, so you can use them in your day-to-day life, because the repeating number is often essentially like a magnification or amplification of the energy of that number, showing up as a message or a signal or a hello or a connection with the universe. Think of it like the universe or your guides kind of highlighting something for you or waving at you. So let's go through each one. Now, I want to be transparent with you for a moment, but as we're getting into this, the 4 systems that we just covered through the numerology, right? The Pythagorean numerology, the Chaldean numerology, Vedic numerology, and Kabbalistic numerology, they don't use the numbers in repeating sequence the way that we do in the West. The recurring number tradition, it's sometimes referred to as like angel numbers. It's largely a modern Western spiritual phenomena. Chinese tradition comes closest. They do use 888, for example. It's considered an enormously like lucky, auspicious number because the phonetic pronunciation of the 888 is very close to the word for prosperity. But even that is different from what we're talking about. Why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about these recurring numbers if none of these other 4 systems identify them? Because in my experience and in the experience of so many clients and the spirit squad here with me in the pod that all tell me about it, working with recurring numbers is one of the most immediately accessible and genuinely powerful ways to begin a real conversation with your guides, the universe. This is something I personally use, something I teach, something that has shown up as meaningful and transformative for so many people I work with in so many ways. So again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. But I think once you hear the meanings through the lens of everything that we just covered about what the numbers mean at their core, it might click in for you in a whole different way and just give you a different layer of your day-to-day reality to kind of play with or move through. These are not the only interpretations that exist for the recurring numbers, but these are mine. And they're the ones that I have found most useful and most true in my work and in my life. I want to give one last quick caveat here before we dive into the numbers. If you have one of these numbers pre-assigned, for example. What I mean by that is like if you have a loved one in the spirit world, I would always default to that meaning as a hello. For example, I have a near and dear loved one and the date that this person passed away happened to be 11/11. And so when I see 11/11 proper, like specifically that number, I think of that as a hello from that person typically, because I have it assigned to them for a specific reason. So if you have something like that, where like that was their baseball jersey number, or, there's some reason that you have it assigned to someone else, or you've just always thought of your person with this recurring number, I would say that is the priority meaning, right? So take that meaning as more true most of the time, unless there's a time that you just feel like one of these other meanings resonates with it in that specific instance. But more often than not, it would be your loved one saying hello with that number or a guide that you've assigned it to, for example. But that's a little caveat. If you've got a recurring number pre-assigned, use that meaning over and above these meanings. If you don't, and you just want to know what these meanings mean, let's dive into them, because like I said, this is a part of my day-to-day life that's really fun. Okay, so diving into this next segment, we are going to go through each of the 1 through 9 in recurring number style. So 111 or 1111 or several ones grouped together. Any repeating ones, I think of like a doorway. Like in your mind, if you imagine the number 11, like it's like a doorway, you could walk right through the middle. So part of how I would take this is the universe tapping you on the shoulder and asking like, hey, what were you just thinking about? Or what are you thinking about right now? What's happening right now? What emotion were you just feeling or sitting in or pushing away? Is it gratitude? Is it frustration? Is it joy? Is it anxiety? The ones are often a reminder that your thoughts, your emotion, your focus, they're actively creating your future. So it's kind of a question, what energy do you want to carry through that doorway with you? That is often how I think about the ones. So it can be like, hey, what were you just thinking about or talking about? Are you trying to create that going forward? So that might apply if you're like complaining or talking about something, a problem instead of a solution, right? But it could also apply if like you had an inspiration or an idea that you were like, I wonder if that's a good idea. And then you see the 1111 and it's like, what were you just thinking about? Pay attention here, carry that forward, right? Okay, so hopefully you see how to use that. Now, interestingly, I have a little side note for several of these. In the Kabbalistic tradition, one is the number of undivided divine will. So seeing ones repeating can also be read or thought of as a moment where your personal will and the divine will are particularly aligned. So what are you willing into your experience right now, which is kind of a different version of what I was saying. So that's how I use the ones when it's not my person. 2 2 or 22 22 or lots of recurring twos in a row, repeating twos. I read this one as this too shall pass. And this one is a little bit of a double-edged sword or two sides of the same coin. You could also say, I always think about with this, like this too shall pass, right? Whatever you're moving through right now, you're supported through it. But sometimes it can be an encouragement to seek like a wise, grounded friend, right? You don't have to be alone, is sometimes what the two is also telling you. Like, this too shall pass, you'll get through this. And also, like, do you feel it? You want to be alone right now? You don't have to be alone. So that can be part of the two. But again, we want to seek wise, grounded friends. We don't want to double down in a harmful way. Twos are like a gentle reassurance from the universe that like you're not alone. Your guides are available. You don't have to feel like you're walking through these experiences alone. There's a larger energy, collective team of guides, angels around you, even when you can't feel it. What feels hard right now is only temporary, is sometimes what it means. You're carried, you're supported. But for me, the reason I see it as like kind of a double-edged sword or two sides of one coin is like, it's a reminder that like if something hard's happening, right? Say you're just had a little squabble with someone you're close to that you care about. And it's like, oh, you see the twos and it's like, this too shall pass. Where it's like, hey, this is just a little speed bump in the road. This too shall pass. But sometimes when I see the twos, it can be like, hey, just heads up, you're about to walk into some stinky energy. This too shall pass. So sometimes it can show up like that. And it can also show up when something really amazing's happening, where it's like, this too shall pass. Like, hey, life is goods and bads and ups and downs. So embrace the good moments when you have them. And if you have a moment that everything feels great and everyone's healthy and things are good and bills are paid and air is fresh, right? And water's flowing, then it's like, this too shall pass. So savor this, right? So that's how I see the twos. Interestingly, the Chaldean tradition connects two deeply to the moon, like we talked about, same with Vedic. And it's about cycles, about the natural timing, the rhythm of things, the kind of that ebb and flow, right? So twos can also be a reminder that you're in a natural cycle rather than a permanent state. That could be a different way to think about it. So kind of like trust the tide instead of this too shall pass, to like trust the tide, reminding you about the cycle. Let's get into the threes. So 333, 33, 33, recurring or repeating threes in a row. There's two meanings here. So first, the way I read this is ascended masters are with you in this moment. You are in the company of elevated spiritual energy, spiritual beings are available to you right now for collaboration, for support. This could be any ascended masters that you work with. I work with several ascended masters of various traditions, including archangels, including Ganesh, including lots of energy. So it could be any of them. And if there's someone that you work with, it could be Jesus, it could be Buddha, it could be any ascended master. So whatever fits for your tradition of preference, it could be great. But it also could be an invitation from an ascended master you haven't worked with yet, or just a comfort or a reminder that like, hey, you're divinely supported. Ascended masters are with you. The other meaning here is you're being invited or will soon be invited into collaboration or community in some area of your life. So pay attention to what shows up around this 333, like if you keep seeing it, pay attention to what is showing up around opportunities for connection that might be presenting themselves, or collaboration that might be presenting themselves. If you're thinking about an idea that you have an inspiration for and you're like not sure how to move it forward and you keep seeing the threes, it could be the universe being like, hey, collaborate. Hey, get a group together and call in cooperative components here. Like, why are you trying to carry this all on your own? So a little nudge to look for opportunities to connect, to be with community, to collaborate, to cooperate, presenting themselves. And it can be presenting themselves as like a gift from the universe, or it could be like a nudge in the butt to like get out there and find them, right? Interestingly, as part of this energy, the Kabbalistic tradition here sees three as reconciliation of opposing forces. So the place where two things that seemed in conflict find their vibe or find their synthesis. So threes can appear when you're being called to find a third way, like look for another option here, a creative solution, unexpected resolution between options that feel stuck, for example. So I love that because it's kind of a different way of what I was saying about opportunities and collaboration. So that's cool. Let's talk about the fours. I love the fours. I really love all of these recurring numbers. And this is probably how I use numerology the most, is these recurring numbers. So the fours, 444, 4444, repeating fours, two meanings here again. So first, it can mean your angels are with you in this moment. Four is a very angelic number because it's a completely harmonious number, right? Like we talked about. So this is one of the most widely recognized signs in spiritual communities, in angel numbers. It's this angel present and support with the number four. So that could be one meaning. Second meaning for the recurring fours could be an encouragement towards balance. It could be like a little gold star. Like if you've been doing the things to keep yourself in balance and you're seeing the fours, the universe is like, yeah, great job being in balance. But if you've been out of balance, it could be a little kiss on the cheek from the universe about like, hey, you need to consider finding some balance here, an encouragement towards balance. So inviting you to look at where your life might be out of balance. The fours can be like an invitation to assess or recalibrate, knowing that you, of course, are supported as you do, evaluate yourself. The Pythagorean numerology tradition holds four as the most sacred number. It's the foundation of all physical reality. So fours appearing repeatedly can also be a signal that something solid and lasting is being built in your life right now. Balance, stability. Even if you can't fully see the structure yet, you can trust the foundation. Fives, repeating fives, 555, 5555, any recurring fives in a row like that. Change is coming is how I often see the fives. Or change is already possible. Sometimes we yearn for change, or we know it's time for change and we're like, when is this going to change? And the universe is saying, hey, change is around the bend. And sometimes we're like, I don't want things to change. I feel uncomfortable with change, or that's my comfort zone you're pushing me out of here. So sometimes it can be that kind of change. But change can also be like temporary change, like you're going to travel somewhere, or maybe you're going to be temporarily asked to do a different role at your job, or maybe they're going to fumigate your house and you have to temporarily relocate. Five is not an indicator necessarily of permanence, right? Like a forever change. It can be a temporary shift in the energy depending on what's coming up and how you're seeing it. So there's also like an underlying encouragement here to like not resist, like stay positive and open. Shifts are on the way. It's fine. You're fine, right? This isn't necessarily like a big dramatic upheaval in every case. It can be subtle, but something's moving. If you're seeing the fives, let it move, let it be. It's fine. Things are going to move if we like it or not. So we might as well be open-hearted and available for creative things, wonderful things to come out of it, right? Which is always a possibility. So really part of what I want to share here with the fives is that in Chaldean numerology, the five is ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of communication, travel, exchange of ideas. So the change that's coming might specifically involve a conversation or a message or new information coming your way as part of a change, right? Or it can be a shift in how you're thinking about something rather than a purely external life change. So be aware when you are seeing the recurring fives. Just be aware of what you're hearing, seeing, reading, experiencing, what's coming up for you. There might be more information being offered to you as part of this change or transition with the energy of the five, which is really cool. Now moving on to repeating sixes. So 666, 66, 66, any recurring repeating sixes. This one surprises people because of it's kind of like cultural baggage. In this context, recurring sixes is a beautiful encouragement. Actually, there is nothing scary about it. It really is about growth and expansion and rebuilding and new possibilities opening up for you. It can be about abundance and gifts and giving and receiving and exchange of energy, which is really beautiful. It can be moving forward in a positive new direction, or more of this wonderful direction that you're already moving in, or towards something even better. It's an encouragement to let yourself receive. Interestingly, in both the Vedic and Chaldean traditions, under the number six, like that category, is Venus. So Venus is about beauty and love and creativity and balance between this giving and receiving energy. So if sixes are showing up for you, it's worth asking, like, specifically where in your relationships or your creative life is ready to grow or expand or trying to show up in your world. Venus energy asks, like, are you allowing yourself to receive lovingly, graciously? Are you allowing yourself to receive as generously as you give? Moving on to the sevens, 777, 77, 77, repeating recurring sevens have two meanings here. So first, this is sacred. It can be a blessing, a lucky sign, something to let you know that your life is divinely supported right now, that things are working out for you. Also, the sevens can be an encouragement to intentionally make choices or intentionally choose your words, for example, rather than reacting or responding by default. You can trust that the sacred energy around you is supporting your discernment. You're going to know which option is right for you of the choices. This can show up sometimes when we're needing to make a choice and we don't want to, or when the universe is saying, like, choose, or someone's going to choose for you. It can be letting you know that there's more choices available than perhaps what meets the eye here. In the Pythagorean tradition, seven is the vehicle of human life, is the way that they see it, the number that governs life's great turning points. So it's those 7-year cycles. If you've ever heard the theory of 7-year cycles, 7, 14, 21, 28, that's from the Pythagorean system. So repeated sevens can signal that you're in a genuine, wonderful turning point. So it can be like a pivotal moment, right? A threshold that you're crossing in your soul's journey, not just a little fork in the road. So honor what you're choosing and choose with intention, and be aware how you're choosing, and if you're being intentional and aligned, or if you're just letting whatever happens with your words, your actions, your deeds, right? Pay attention there. So number 8, right? The 888, 88, 88, recurring or repeating eights. This is a power number. This works again in two directions. So it could be the universe reminding you that your thoughts and words carry real creative power. Remember, earlier I said, like, what you think about, you bring about, act accordingly. Or it could be the universe actively encouraging you to keep your focus on exactly what you were just thinking about, right? Like, hey, pay attention to what you were just thinking about. That's a powerful inspiration. That's a big idea. What were you just thinking about or talking about? Is your energy aligned? Yes, that here, right? Put the power here. It could have more momentum behind it if you allow it. The Chaldean and Vedic traditions have 8 represented by Saturn for both of their energies, the planet of karma and the teacher and long-term reward, stuff that's built with integrity and intention over time. So 8s can also be a signal that the karmic energy is returning to you right now. What goes around comes around, right? What you have put out there or put your effort into in love, in integrity, in intention is coming back around to you, that you're in a moment of like a karmic return. Can be the case there. Moving into the 9s, 999, 9990, repeating 9s. This is an idea that you're approaching the completion of a cycle or a phase or a stage in your life. anything can be felt positively or in a challenge. Maybe it's letting you know a phase is about to shift that you are not ready for it to shift, or you feel like you don't want it to shift. And the universe is like, yes, girl, we're moving you onto something better. It's time to leave this behind. It's time to finish what needs to be finished, wrap things up with intention. Something's preparing to close and a new chapter can begin now. It's important to like honor endings, right? But don't drag it out. Don't rush past the close of things either. Complete things with care. Every tradition today that we talked about really gives a lot of significance to the number 9, and it's the energy of completion, that the soul has traveled the full journey. It can be like a new chapter or a new season beginning. It's this universal compassion and release. And the Chaldean tradition, as I mentioned, holds 9 as so sacred that it's set apart entirely. So when 9s are appearing repeatedly, it's not a small or casual signal. It's the universe confirming that something significant is completing or getting ready to renew in your journey or your story. So treat it with some reverence and put some respect on 999's name, would you? So before we wrap up, I want to give a quick honorable mention to master numbers. We didn't talk about this, but before I close, I want to give you one more quick concept just to kind of tuck in your back pocket. Master numbers in numerology are 11, 22, 33, and they're considered never to be reduced down to a single digit. Usually how we get to those 1 through 9 numbers in numerology is adding numbers together. So you would add the numbers of your birthday together, for example, to look at one thing, or the date to decide what the energy of the date's going to be. You reduce it down to one number. These master numbers don't reduce down. They stay in their full energy, 11, 22, 33. So we never reduced them. They carried like an amplified, more intensified version of their core energy. So 11 is the master intuitive, for example. 22 is the master builder. 33 is the master teacher. These are considered to signal like a heightened spiritual potential or potency, and also sometimes a bit of a heightened responsibility in this lifetime. So I just want to touch on those, even though it's not really what we're talking about today. So here's what I want you to do this week as we're closing up. Just notice. That's it. No calculating, no homework, no pressure at all. Just move through your days with a little more awareness of the numbers that are catching your eye or showing up when a number pops up right in front of you. It could be a clock. It could be anything you're looking at online, tallies, counts of likes or subscribers. It could just people have them floating in their videos sometimes, but it could also be in the real world, a street number, an office number, a building number, a license plate in front of you, something that's on your receipt or your gas pump. It could be anywhere around you. It could be in the price of something at a store, right? So just let yourself notice what is coming for you. Is there a recurring number that's showing up in your world? And when one stops you, you can come back to this episode and look it up and let the numbers start to have a conversation with you and see what feels true for you. And here's a little pro tip before we go. If you feel like you're seeing all the numbers, right? Because some people are like, Joy, I'm not seeing just one series of numbers. I'm seeing all the numbers, 777, 444, 1111. So if that's you and you're seeing all the numbers, or you just start seeing all the numbers, don't overthink it. That's not confusion. It's actually a really beautiful sign when all the numbers are showing up like that. It simply means that you're in the flow, that you're in active conversation with the universe, that the universe is saying hello in so many ways right now and letting you know you're in the flow of your intuition, of your awareness. So just say thank you, say hi to the universe, and keep it pushing. I want to go deeper with you on some of these. So if there's any of these that have really piqued your curiosity and you want to do full episodes, please let me know. I also have a free mini course that does a bit of this lesson with the 1 through 9 numbers, but then also teaches you how to set up non-numeric signs with your loved ones. You can get that at joyfulmedium.com/sign-magnet. It's usually on the homepage of the website, joyfulmedium.com. So you can find that. And as always, let me know what numbers are showing up for you. If this episode has connected some dots for you or opened your eyes, I would love to know about it. So thank you so much for being here with me today. Big hugs, lots of love. Bye for now from inside Spirit Speakeasy.